When this accident occurred just over 2 years ago, I did a quick look on the go-around gone horribly wrong. Now it's time for the rest of the story, so stick with me on FlyWire. Hi, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on FlyWire, we're going to talk about the crash of a V-35B in Angwin, California in July of 2021. The airplane had 3 people on board and had made a VFR journey over Los Angeles from Temecula, to the Napa Valley early in the morning. I'll leave a link below to my quick look video so you can get a little more background on the accident. I'm not going to repeat myself here and go over the entire thing. Suffice it to say that the airplane was high and fast throughout the approach and overshot the final by a considerable margin. The airplane was still fast when the pilot forced it on into a hard landing just past the threshold of the 3,200-foot runway. And as you can see from this 4-flight 3D shot of the runway, it's a bit non-standard in general, the runway is. 1/6 is downsloping with undulations, and it's not completely straight. And at the end, where all the hangars are, it climbs sharply into a bit of a plateau. Kind of busy. The airplane bounced 4 or 5 times during this event, each one resulting in a higher pitch attitude and respectively a slower speed, a typical pilot-induced oscillation, a PIO. One witness said that he thought the airplane was doing a touch and go, or maybe he was making a low pass. Another witness was doing a pre-flight at the departure end and turned to look when she heard the roar of the engine as the pilot added power. She said the airplane turned left and flew overhead her at 20 feet. It went through a low spot in the trees, the tree line just over the vineyard, and then she saw the nose come up, the left wing dip, and the airplane dive down. She lost sight as it was behind the hill, but saw the black smoke immediately thereafter. The first point of impact was approximately 3,500 feet on a heading of 140 degrees from the departure into the runway, so about a 20-degree heading change. The aircraft cleared 2 trees before the left wing impacted a 50-foot tree, so he didn't do much climbing. The left wing was essentially destroyed, leaving the left aileron in the tree and then separating the tip tank from the airplane, where it ended up about 150 feet west of the main wreckage. The airplane came to rest on a 250-degree heading, 500 feet from the first point of impact. It was nearly consumed by fire, and all the 3 occupants were killed by the impact. The gear was still down at impact, and the prop displayed S-bending and chordwise scratching consistent with power on at impact. The fuel system was found to have no debris in the system, and the selector was on the right tank. No mechanical issue was found with the engine. The pilot decided to do a late go-around, and applying power very near to the end of the runway at a very slow speed, it climbed nose high in a high drag configuration until tree impact. This is where it gets interesting. The throw-over yoke was set for the right seat. It turned out the 73-year-old private pilot was flying from the right seat. The 37-year-old daughter of the pilot was in the left seat, and there happened to be a GoPro camera attached to the top of the cabin so that its field of view encompassed the scene through the windshield as well as the panel, most of the panel, and the sides of the occupants. So it had a pretty good view of what was happening in the front seats of the airplane and outside. The audio was plugged into the aircraft intercom system, and the data survived the fire, and the NTSB did not provide the video in the docket, but there is an extensive report analyzing what happened in the video, and I think that was a prudent choice. The final report showed that the left seat pilot held a private pilot certificate and had a total of 27 hours. That's inconsistent with what I know about private pilot training, and the hours in the final report were most likely from the latest medical application for both pilots and is inaccurate. The right seat pilot owner of the aircraft made the takeoff, and then the left seat pilot flew for the rest of the flight, then handed over the airplane to the right seater for the approach and landing. So during the flight, there was much discussion about various aspects of the flight, like fuel planning, navigation planning, considerations, and things like that. And preparing to land, the left seat pilot asked the right seater for specific speeds and altitudes for the landing phase. During the actual event, the pilot did not follow his own rules, which is unfortunate. Most importantly, the pilot did not hold a commercial rating and was not a flight instructor. And I think this is a critical factor in this accident that we need to pay attention to. The video showed the airplane crossing the threshold at 1,850 feet on the panel, which is actually, I think, 25 feet below field elevation, and that likely indicates an improper altimeter setting. The speed of the aircraft was 100 mile per hour throughout the overshooting turn to final. It started very fast at over 150, but during the overshooting turn to final it was 100 miles an hour. And the correction in forcing the aircraft on the ground, even during that, the airplane was fast. And the manifold pressure revealed that the pilot was reducing power slowly throughout that whole evolution. The approach speed should be in the neighborhood of 81 miles an hour with a gross weight airplane, with a threshold speed of about 76 being a good target for a short runway. The touchdown typically would be in the 60s. At the airspeed that a pilot tried to land, it wanted to fly, not land. And after the fourth bounce, the pilot-induced oscillation series, the left seat pilot called for a go-around, okay, which is a good call, perhaps late. The airplane impacted the runway again, followed by a bounce, and the airspeed indicator at this point was showing about 60 miles an hour. The airplane pitched up sharply and remained in a nose-high attitude until tree impact. The final report concludes that the airplane stalled at an altitude where it could not recover. I just don't think so. I disagree with that. The airplane hit a tree on the left wing, and that spun it around. That's the physics part of that, not a stall spin. The tree impact occurred on the 140 heading from the runway, and the airplane was not turning. That sudden stop of forward momentum was caused by hitting the tree with the left wing with enough force to destroy it, separate the tip tank, and leave the aileron in the tree. That changed the forward motion of the aircraft into rotational moment, and that is how the heading of the airplane at ground impact was so radically different from the impact heading. It's just physics in that case. It isn't to say that the airplane might not have stalled if it had actually cleared the tree, but at the point of impact, it was under control. So I think the NTSB got it wrong on that one. The elephant in the room here, though, is that the V-35B was a typically equipped Bonanza with a single-place throw-over yoke. And pilot-only brakes, by the way, and they discussed that in the video. The pilot owner was not a CFI, and it's not a good idea to do initial instruction in an airplane with a throw-over yoke. As a matter of fact, the FAA requires dual controls for instructional purposes. However, in the American Bonanza Society, there is an exception to do recurrent instruction in a throw-over equipped aircraft. If the IP agrees to it, it requires IP familiarity, preparation, and experience. For example, I can fly the airplane from the right using rudder vaders for roll, and then with my left hand on the center portion of the control yoke for pitch. That's how you can control the airplane, but you have to be very experienced and have done it before. Rarely are there any flying instruments on the right side of the aircraft, and I think that was an issue as well. So you've got to look across the cockpit. Clearly, the pilot was rushed throughout the approach and the whole landing attempt. He was not a CFI, no matter how much experience he had in the airplane from the left. Flying it from the right seat made it a whole different critter. Where to look for speed and altitude, those references, they're not in the same place. Where the engine controls are, they're not in the same place. Okay, they don't fall readily hand, not not use them with the right hand normally when you're sitting in the left seat. And the airplane bounced very hard on the fourth time, creating such hit so hard that the camera video was unstable. It corrected itself before impact, but it was at this point that the left seat pilot called the go-around. The right seat pilot looked down and applied throttle. The manifold pressure then increased and showed 27 inches. The tachometer showed the airplane RPM increasing slowly above 2,000 RPM. The airplane then settled into a positive pitch attitude and the right seat pilot looked down again at the throttle area, and the airplane settled back on the runway into another porpoise. The left seat pilot then said, "Oh," looked up outside, then back down at the throttle area, and at that point he looked outside again and then put both hands on the yoke, and he made pitch changes trying to fly the airplane. It's clear to me that what most likely happened here was at some point during the final turn, as he was attempting to reduce throttle, to reduce speed, he accidentally reduced the RPM instead. And when he tried to go around, the airplane did not accelerate as he imagined it would, and he got confused. He looked down and trying to figure out what was wrong. The throttle was full up, but he didn't check the RPM. When he did that, he forsook anything else. He focused on pitch, forsaking power settings or gear retraction in an attempt to clear the trees. At that point, he was task saturated and did not process the fact that the engine was not accelerating to full power. He channelized his attention into one thing, exclusive of all else, and that was the critical mistake here. What is important is the lessons learned for all of us going forward, frankly. It's a tragedy, and I feel terrible about the pilot and the daughter's families. This is a tragic accident that didn't have to happen. So let's learn some lessons out of this, okay? And one of the elephant in the room here that's standing is don't act like an instructor if you're not. There are all sorts of factors that you do not consider when you attempt to instruct a student in an airplane, even if you're familiar with it. And this is what happened to the accident pilot when he took the right seat of the airplane that was not equipped for dual controls. He wasn't prepared to fly it from the right seat, looking left, and identifying where all the airspeed, all the information is, and being able to manipulate the engine, etc. He wasn't ready for that. He wasn't an instructor, and that's the key thing. I can totally understand sharing the joys of flight and landing and letting another person fly the airplane. That's a wonderful thing. That could easily have been done by letting the other pilot fly from the right seat during the cruise portion. If that was not adequate, then rent or buy a dual yoke or just use a more appropriate platform, an airplane. As much as I love the Bonanza, the single yoke airplane is not a good training platform. No brakes on the right side, scary. My F-33C has dual controls, including dual brakes. More importantly, I've got a fair amount of experience in the right seat, and transitioning to land in a challenging situation is not a good time to try it. Another lesson learned here is the accident is that an unstable approach can be catastrophic. Flying fast and overshooting the runway should have earned a go around right away. That overshoot should have said, okay, we're going to try this again, and hit your numbers and hit your spacing. There really is no stigma for going around. If someone challenges you on it or teases it, frankly, I think they're an idiot, and their opinion doesn't matter. You got to know when to go around and try it again. If the numbers aren't right, your speed and altitude and your flight path are not normal, don't cowboy it, don't force it, go around, fix it, and do it, finesse it on the second try. What's wrong with getting a little more flying time? And more importantly, doing it right. Don't force it. You have time. You should, if you have gas. Now let's look at the bounces. If you mess up landing, the landing to the point that the airplane bounces, but you're in control, speed, heading, pitch-wise, perhaps a little bit of power will then stabilize the airplane, and then you can effect another flare and a smooth landing from that second flare. Don't force it to the ground. Don't hope for the best and get out of phase, okay, with your pitch. If that's not the case, or you're doing a second bounce, add power, accelerate, go around, and do the pattern again. A PIO is induced when your reaction is out of phase with the airplane. Your reaction, you're human, so your reaction is a little bit slow to what's happening here and behind what the airplane is actually doing. Okay, it happens. And it could happen to you, so the only way out of it is to stop it by setting a positive pitch angle, adding power, and going around. Okay, I don't care how good you are or how experienced you are. Since you're human, a PIO can happen to you. Be aware of that and don't let that build up. Bounce a second time, that's when your odds of a PIO developing go up astronomically. So the least bad thing that's going to happen then is that the nose gear collapses and you slide to a stop with a severely damaged airplane, but nobody's hurt. This particular go-around from the PIO is probably the worst case situation. Hoping for the best is not a good pilot strategy. My suggestion is you fly the airplane and you do it intentionally. As I said, this is a tragic accident that did not have to happen. Think about your choices and your decisions. Think through the consequences. Perhaps a good question to ask yourself now is, doing what you intend to do, how's that going to read in the accident report later on if things don't work out? Don't trust to luck. Fly the airplane and stay within established boundaries. In particular, don't try to be a CFI if you're not. I'm sorry. There is a reason the CFIs make big bucks, right? But by all means share the joy of flight, but do it safely. You may be comfortable in your niche of flying, but that doesn't equate to having the situational awareness or the skills or the ability to teach and then handle unexpected or unplanned problems when you step out of your bubble. Okay, so don't act like a CFI when you're not. Study and be a CFI. I suggest you do that. That's not a bad thing, but don't act like a CFI when you're not. Expand your boundaries with a good flight instructor. Facilitate your friends to have the same experience. If you'd like to subscribe, it looks like this a bit like this here. Be sure to hit the bell for alerts to new posts. I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters here as well for helping me put these videos together. If you'd like to help, I'll leave a link below to the FlyWire Patreon page. As the merch store is also down below as well, and you get t-shirts. I'm still working on hats. Might have to change vendors. We'll see. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on FlyWire.